When we look at the arc of history, we tend to assume that progress is an upward trajectory toward comfort. We invent tools and organize societies to make our lives easier, longer, and more liberated. We trace that instinct back to southern Mesopotamia, specifically ancient Sumer. This is the origin point of 39 distinct historical firsts, including the wheel, the 60-minute hour, and the city itself. The Sumerian records, however, suggest a different motivation. To the people who lived there, these tools were requirements of a divine contract rather than steps toward human freedom. Their worldview was dictated by the belief that the universe was controlled by a pantheon of giant, capricious gods who viewed mortals with complete indifference. These deities emitted something called malam, a radiating energy that covered them in terrifying splendor. When a mortal was exposed to it, they experienced a biological, flesh-creeping paralysis that the Sumerians called Ni. This first civilization operated as a survival mechanism. It was a highly organized system designed to coordinate human labor in service to a terrifying cosmic hierarchy. To understand that fear, you have to look at the ground they stood on. While the Nile in Egypt flooded with predictable, calendar-like precision, the Tigris and Euphrates rivers were violent and destructive. Flash floods could wipe out an entire season's harvest in a single afternoon. To the early farmers settling this valley, nature appeared actively hostile and unforgiving. They personified this ecological chaos in their supreme deity, the storm god Enlil. He was the wind and the sudden flood, a master who could nourish the crops or drown a city on a whim. The Sumerians lived with the constant realization that they were small, the environment was lethal, and they were at the mercy of forces that did not care if they survived the night. According to the Atrahasis epic, the earth originally belonged to a supreme council of deities called the Anunnaki. The Anunnaki forced a lower tier of gods, known as the Igigi, to perform the heavy manual labor. For thousands of years, the Igigi were forced to dredge the heavy, silt-choked channels of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers by hand. Eventually, the exhaustion broke them. The blue-collar gods dropped their tools and marched on the great temple to mutiny against their masters. To resolve the crisis, the water god Enki proposed a new management solution. He pinched off pieces of clay and manufactured a workforce to take over the shovels, human beings. In the theology of the first civilization, humans were not the beloved children of the universe. We were a manufactured labor force, born strictly to dig in the mud. Managing the gods' vast agricultural estates required an incredibly organized workforce. This logistical puzzle led directly to the invention of the city. In the center of these new urban hubs, they built towering step pyramids like the Great Ziggurat of Ur. These functioned as literal houses, built to shelter and feed the physical statues of the ruling gods. Written language began as a bookkeeping tool. Cuneiform managed complex agricultural data long before literature. These geometric grid divisions functioned as ledger sheets, tracking exact quotas of grain, sheep, and beer owed to the temple to ensure profitability. To enforce these quotas, they invented the Lugal, the king. The king's job was to act as a foreman, interpreting divine laws and keeping the human workforce productive. Urban planning, written language, and hierarchical government were all gears in a giant machine designed to feed the gods. There was no reward waiting at the end of this labor. The Sumerian afterlife was a dreary, inescapable desert where the dead ate dust, regardless of how obediently they had worked. Survival on the surface was equally precarious. If the human population multiplied too fast or became too loud, the deities would eradicate them without a second thought. Centuries before the story of Noah, the Sumerians recorded the original Great Flood myth. In their version, the deluge is a management decision to drown a noisy, annoying workforce and start over. This was the psychological weight of ancient Sumer, a brief existence of toil, shadowed by the threat of cosmic annihilation. After 2,000 years, the Sumerian civilization collapsed. Soil salinization and brutal invasions turned their cities into these crumbling mud brick ruins. But their conquerors were in awe of the urban machine the Sumerians had built. The Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians adopted the bureaucracy, the script, and even the gods. That legacy cascaded down through history. Every time you check a 60-minute clock, sign a contract, or walk through a gridded city street, you are interacting with Sumerian survival tactics. The ultimate irony is that we now view these tools as the engines of human progress, yet they were originally forged by a people trying to survive the terrifying splendor of their gods.